Now, this NCIS one has two big things that we've got to address immediately. The first is that, yeah, it's one of apparently the real bad times for trans representation in a cop show. So, I mean, you know how bad those generally are?
Like a man who's all man.
Honey, I'm more man than you can handle.
Assume it's gonna be a hell of a lot worse if this one is so rough that it stands out as transphobic from people I've seen online. The second thing is that I'd always assumed that NCIS was a spin-off of CSI, but in fact that totally isn't true at all. In fact, it's a spin-off of JAG. And I know at this point there are too many acronyms running around in this police procedural environment, but the key difference is that CSI is about law enforcement explicitly, while JAG and NCIS are both about military law, and cases that are sort of related to that whole field. I mean, it literally stands for Naval Criminal Investigation Service, which is bizarre to me, but I guess I never really bothered to think about what it stood for before now. It's also one of the longest running police procedural shows, and the episode that we care about today, Dead Man Talking, comes to us from season 1, way back in 2003. God, it really is ticking all the boxes for expect the worst trans inclusion you can imagine, but let's keep an open-ish mind and recognise that even the most terrible moments can include lessons to be learned, can give us something to think about, and can go towards forming that big pile of stuff we get to point to when people say that trans people only recently appeared as a thing that exists. 'Cause, nope, that's not true. There are absolutely tons of points where we appear in media all over the place for the past, 100 years. So it definitely isn't just some new fact.
To his statistics, there should be 30,000 transsexuals of both sides in the United States.
Anyway, with my opening spiel waffle done, and if you like the waffle, then maybe check out my Patreon. Sorry, the self-promotion disease is spreading rapidly. But with that out of the way, let's just dive straight into the episode and figure out what exactly is going on here. Oh, and before you ask if maybe I should have explained the characters that are going to appear, I'll mention their names if I feel like it when they pop up, but frankly, none of their backstory or who they are matters much to our trans investigation based focus here, so The episode begins with the discovery of a murdered dude in an elevator, a discovery that is somewhat marred by what I have to say is the worst editing I think I might have ever seen on a professional show.
And I'm not walking up 5 floors for a false alarm. Can't you shut it off here? Don't you think?
I'm sure that's incorrect because there's got to be worse, but all I could think in the moment was how absolutely jarring the jumps and the shots and the way the characters spoke to each other was, so jarring that it kind of distracted me from what should have been the gruesome and horrifying scene that I think the show really wanted to shock me with. Seriously, if you're a show person in any capacity, director, writer, editor, actor, maybe avoid doing something like this, because it kind of makes you look like you don't know how to do your job at all.
We're a family, but no two of us are the same.
Paul Prancer.
Regardless, the show then jumps straight into its title sequence, and immediately wins me back over by having a ridiculous moment wherein the word Navy is transformed by shining lights into the word NCIS, a thing that is funny to me because the word NCIS contains the word naval in it, and that it's still on the screen. So they just really want you to know the thing about how this is all Navy connected. A thing that, as I mentioned in the intro, I completely didn't know, and I'd seen a few of these episodes, and I don't think anyone I've talked to knew either. Failure is comedic sometimes, is I guess what I'm getting at here. But we also get introduced during this title sequence to the characters of the team. The team of serious top man, woman, funny sex dude, goth/she is just kinda different science girl, eccentric old science man, and of course, America. God bless the USA and all that patriotic jazz. This shit is both kind of propaganda and also very pro-military, so it really centers itself around a particular identity approach to that fucked up country. We get out of the little fun silly intro, and then the team is told that Chris Bacci was murdered as the somber music kicks in. Chris Bacci being, I guess, the guy we saw in the elevator who got killed, and also apparently one of the agents from the NCIS office who was just sort of in the background up till this point. I guess that's a big deal, that it's one of their own who got killed, and it definitely feels like it lends a more desperate and aggressive tone to the investigation that they're going to conduct. Like, they want to catch the bastard that did it, and will do whatever it takes to get that done kind of vibe. They grill the people who were at the building, the security guard and the janitor, over the fact that neither one of them seemed to see anything, and there weren't even security cameras installed.
How could you not see him? Does this lobby get that busy? He could have come in.
And it turns out that while the body looks gruesomely disemboweled, in fact the cause of death was a bullet wound to his neck from behind. Yeah, it's got all the pieces of the puzzle to build a real murder mystery from for those investigators to solve, but the only mystery I'm stuck on is, why the hell are we talking about it right now? Where's that trans shit I was promised? Well, after a series of badly cut together scenes that kind of rush us through all the investigation stuff, we finally get to our real meat of the episode, when the team discovers that the dead dude Chris had fucking shoved a memory card into his body in a way that was hiding it, which is why he had got cut open by whoever killed him. And that memory card leads us to...
obviously, they're surveillance photos.
a bunch of photos of a woman, the person that Chris had been tailing as part of the cold case that he was doing, and also apparently an attractive woman based on how the dude obsessed with sex stuff reacts to her.
Ooh, hottie.
Don't you think she's a little bit too old?
Now, your audience at the time is probably thinking something inconspicuous at this point. They're probably looking at her and just assuming that she is a murderer or something. But I'm pretty sure that we all know where this is gonna go, right? I mean, we've all been here, you saw the title of the video, you know what my deal is. This is only going in one direction, and that one direction is that this woman is going to turn out to be trans, and we have to deal with the ramifications of what the fuck that means for the community. There's a bit of sass between the team about the sex dude talking about the woman in ways that objectifies her, and we learn that this woman isn't one of the people who works at the building, that she is herself a bit of a mystery too.
Maybe her.
Regardless, the team finds out some details from Chris's case files. That there was this Navy officer who stole a bunch of money from the Navy and then died in a car accident, and so got buried and the crime got forgotten. But now, as you might be beginning to piece together pretty quickly, he is somehow getting tied to this woman who was willing to kill a dude for investigating her. I don't need to spell out the obvious direction that NCIS is taking this, right? It's really just ripped directly from the plot of Ace Ventura. A criminal dude transitions to avoid getting found out and to allow him to continue doing crimes. It's using the visage of transness as a mask for evil murderous men in a way that is horrifying and dehumanizing of the seriousness of our lives, while also giving them what feels like carte blanche to misgender and dead name and be a piece of shit to the woman involved because she isn't A, really a woman, just a man pretending, and B, a murderer.
She's not Lois Einhorn! She's Ray Finkel. She's a man.
You see the immediate nightmare track that they've laid for themselves by going through with this, right? Well, don't worry. In the conclusion, I'm sure we'll dive further into why this kind of plot arc is stupid as fuck, But for now, let's see how they actually handle the trans stuff, if they bother actually incorporating it at all, and if they even commit to having this woman be a trans woman in any way, or just be a man who became a woman for criminal purposes, like I thought. I mean, for now at the very least, NCIS has just focused on the fact that the team is trying to hunt down this woman for the lead that she represents, and are still not thinking about the wider trans ramifications of this case, because that hasn't become an apparent thing to them just yet. I mean, I'm sure the instant that it gets revealed, this is all gonna get real nasty real fast, but for right now, from their perspective, it's just a cis woman who is connected to some money that went missing and a dead dude. In the course of this investigation, they go to Commander Voss, the guy who killed himself, supposedly in a car's commanding officer, Captain Graves, and...
I'm sorry.
Wait a fucking minute. That's Azazel from Supernatural. God, did that show just have, like, people from everywhere? I feel like knowing Supernatural makes you watch any other show and recognise the darndest random actors showing up over and over again.
I'm looking for the best and brightest.
But anyways, the squad wants to learn more about Commander Voss. Some things that might, I don't know, lead them to discover some dark secret truth perhaps that the military especially would not be comfortable with being shared. I mean, God, this is a place that was using don't ask, don't tell for the longest time, and in fact might be going back to it very soon, or perhaps worse. I mean, they've already banned all trans service members. I've got to imagine the gay people are up next. And I know what you're thinking, and trust me, I'm thinking it too. God, I'd love not to be remembering current modern day US politics right about now. But we are talking about a military show from the US involving a trans person. I don't know how you thought that we would avoid any political stuff. Back on the episode, it seems clear that the show and the characters in it are being pushed/pushing us in the audience to suspect that Voss didn't do any credit card fraud really, and in fact there was a woman in his life who was using him to do it. Because he didn't have any of the millions of dollars he stole when he died in his accounts, and they could never find where it all went.
Commander Voss died, all he had was saving, which is why I'm not certain he did it.
It's a bit of a classic fake-out maneuver by shows that want to use trans identity as a shock reveal to surprise their cis audience, and it is actually a little bit transphobic at the core of it. I know, everything's transphobic when you're being so critical, but also we do sort of live in a world that was built upon a lot of transphobia, so yeah, pretty much everything is a little bit transphobic when you look at it, and you don't even think about or know that those things are transphobic until you consider it, and this is sort of one of them. The idea that we as a people are good for shock value, that we represent a surprise by our existence, and that our main purpose is to serve as a twist to potentially cause instant gut reactions from people. Gut reactions that are tailored to in often negative ways, like disgust or fear or horror.
Beautiful lady. Look, I took a picture of her.
Through some magical Sherlock-style detective skills on the other team's end, they managed to find the address of this mystery woman. And seriously, the way that it's done is the identification of a particular kind of tree in the locations that it got planted, along with the existence of a specific era of street lamp and where it remained, and that's some incredibly impressive investigation shenanigans to be done in such a reasonably short time. And we get the name of the woman herself in the course of this. Amanda Reed.
Here it is. Amanda Reed.
God damn it. See, a thing that we're always looking for when it comes to trans episodes is the name of the character and the name of the episode. Do either of those contain what the writers clearly think are funny little clues and hints towards what is really going on here? And the answer is that both kind of do. Dead man talking is specifically used within the episode to refer to the dead detective, but you can also interpret that as a case of when the detectives are talking to the trans woman, that they are talking to the dead man who she used to be and that she killed to become herself. With the name, well, oftentimes it's either just the feminine version of their original name, or in a case like this one, it's sort of a little kind of clue if you squint at it right. If you don't understand what I'm getting at here, dismantle the name Amanda down to its constituent syllables. A-man-der. A man. Duh. It's a sort of classic joke that's been thrown a lot in recent years at stuff, like what the name of a trans character in Harry Potter would be, and if some of you think I'm doing too much reading into this, then I don't know what to tell you. I've seen a lot of shit over the years, and I'm not surprised that any cis writers would be pulling this sort of crap, to be honest, so it's not confirmed or definitive, but the squad goes to talk to this Amanda Reed, and along the way finds nothing on her record. She has no criminal background or any other spots that would make her stand out, except for the fact that one of their members was investigating her from a distance, and then he died.
Chris was keeping his distance for a reason until we find out why we do the same.
The dude who's obsessed with sex wants to jump into grilling her straight away, but the smarter, older gent recognizes that she is an unknown quantity, and they should engage her with the same distance that the now dead gentleman used. I mean, actually, maybe do a better job than that guy for obvious reasons, I hope, but I understand the general idea there. We get a little gay joke about the NCIS agents because a landlord suspects they might be gay and seems very angry about that fact before they show him their badges.
You guys together?
Remember, it is that time of the century when just being queer was a bad time in media. All you really got was dogged on in every possible fucking direction, so not too much of a surprise. We get some more supporting details for the mystery, namely that Amanda Reed doesn't have any identifications in the system, like a license or whatever, and also that the townhouse she uses used to be in the Voss family for generations before she purchased it. All connections that are getting us towards that reveal. Any point now. Probably after one of the male agents does something embarrassing and then will feel disgusted for being attracted to a trans woman, if I had to take any bets about it. A planned stakeout happens, they watch Amanda to see what goes on, we get another little hint that is so small that I feel like it could only really work for trans people in the audience, namely that she has a prescription from the pharmacy. Hint, it's probably HRT, the estrogen shit that a lot of women use, as well as possibly anti-androgens if she is pre-GRS.
Then to a pharmacy to pick up a prescription.
And then we get a bigger hint. The hint that Chris Paci was looking into the Bangkok's Visitor Bureau for reasons that nobody on the team can understand. I think we can all understand right here and right now, though I will explain for anyone who doesn't get what's happening. Thailand has been at the forefront for trans surgeries, specifically surgeries for trans women, for quite a while now. Most of the best clinics in the world and the highly recommended ones can be found there, and the service that you're going to get, as well as the medical procedures, are of a quality that is hard to find anywhere else, especially at this time period of 2003. In fact, a lot of places will refer you to Thailand and use them as part of the healthcare coverage that they offer. So Amanda Reed looking at going to Bangkok would have been part of getting that surgery done. And God, this whole mystery would be over by now if the team had a single trans person or trans-savvy person on it. Because all of this keeps becoming more and more obvious as time goes by.
I'm surfing the website of the Bangkok Visitors Bureau, but I cannot figure out why.
Poor cis people, they never stood a fucking chance. I don't think any of these lot have ever even seen a trans person before, let alone understand any of the intricate details about our lives. And I'm still reserving judgment when we see some further information about it, but I do at least appreciate NCIS for acknowledging the existence, even at a distance, of HRT with that pharmacy comment. Like, so many shows act as if being a trans woman means that you're a dude. Then you get a surgery, and bam, all of a sudden, woman. a concept that has gone a long way towards forming a harmful and incorrect stereotype of transitioning for so many people.
But she's gonna be just fine.
The stakeout gets a little creepy because the sexy NCIS dude uses the camera to keep an eye on her while she's standing around in her house mostly naked, using the guise of doing his job and detective work to effectively be a sex pest.
Front door and my window trim.
No, where'd you go?
Sure, love that idea that doesn't get any kind of pushback at all from anyone except for in a mildly joking sense. The sex pest then decides to use the one diseased and horribly fucked up little brain cell that he has left to then go and hit on the person that they're trying to investigate while she's outside doing some gardening. 'Cause I don't know, this person is not only a stereotype of some of the terrible aspects of masculinity, but also really bad at his fucking job.
That's an unusual surveillance technique.
Well, Zenozo is an unusual agent.
Sex pest dude uses the knowledge he obtained from spying on Amanda to flirt with her better. That's creepy. And this ends with him and Amanda hitting it off. I think we found which guy is gonna be getting turned into the butt of a joke by the trans reveal at the end, and some people would say that it couldn't happen to a worse guy, but those people suck, because let's face it, the idea that a trans woman is a punishment for a dude, and is something that makes him a laughingstock, is a horrible one that encourages the worst attitudes towards us and goes a long way towards justifying that trans panic defense bullshit where men attack trans women because of the fear and revulsion they feel at finding out they were attracted to or engaged in relations with us, as well as combined with a whole bunch of the shaming that's going to go on at the end of this episode, probably. It's a big old yikes, and something that is not positive in any fucking regards. Back on episode though, we find out that Voss is still alive, because the science goth chick discovers something that should have been super easy to find out originally, which is that the person from the car crash who burned to death had a different blood type to the guy who it was supposed to be.
Is type O positive. Lieutenant Commander Voss, AB negative.
Which feels incredulous, really, that it wasn't picked up at all before now. And so now people are assuming that he's alive and out there with millions, and then Amanda Reed is just like his mistress who is using that money to get by on while he is secretly out there. Two of the people go off to find out that the person who tested for the blood died in a car crash a few years ago, and Sex Dude nicks a package from the door of Amanda Reed and discovers that she is buying anti-aging cream, which is maybe how the show is gonna justify the fact that she looks so young and didn't raise any bells at all for anyone as being like a trans woman because she looked the same age as Commander Voss.
Anti-aging.
I guess NCIS is saying that the anti-aging cream from infomercials is some really good shit that does in fact totally work, or at least works enough to support one of their plot lines, and it getting stretched out for an entire fucking episode. And before we move on to the fact that Sex Dude gets caught by Amanda looking at her packages and he flirts with her well enough to get invited into her home to have coffee, something which he does because he assumes that she is just some hot lady related to a killer and not the killer themselves who fate killed themselves to transition. Well, before we get to that, I want to quickly just go into the fact that this show didn't really bother doing any of the trans stuff at all, except as a mystery that it has built and built and built for the past 35 minutes.
But I cannot figure out why.
Like, I get having a slow burn, but what it means is that rather than deal with a decently paced level of trans explanation, I'm stuck dealing with bursts of explanation about setup and expectation from audiences and how that is used/abused by the writers, which will then be presumably followed up with a sudden explosion of trans content to discuss that will be barraged at us so fast that it's going to take me the rest of the fucking video to just disentangle all its bullshit. It's just not a very efficient use of representation, and speaks more to how our role in this is not as a trans character, but more as a trans twist that gets flung at you.
How could I forget it? What are you doing here?
The group decides to use Sex Dude and his connection to Amanda, though, in the last 5 minutes of this episode, because she asks him out on a date, and they want to use him to try and get to Voss, who they think is watching Amanda. Little do they know. In fact, little does anybody know at this point. Let's face it, they've buried the lead on this so fucking hard. I've been waiting to do my "and there it is" for fucking ages, and I've had no chance to do so. When the serious people in the squad tell the goth chick about the plan though, she has a bit of a laugh about it, because she now knows what's really happening.
Tony made contact with Amanda. They're going to a pub, and Commander Voss is probably stalking her. Really?
And yet again, this show is using the idea of hooking up a trans woman as a form of joke on a cis man. Because it's not like that's normal or okay, right? It's a prank because of how revulsive that idea is. And then as a way of telling them about how she learned the trans status of Amanda Reed, the goth chick decides to do an impression of that infamous scene from Chinatown, when Jack Nicholson beats a woman into telling him that her daughter is also her sister, because she had, well, let's say some really bad stuff happen with her father.
My daughter, my sister, my daughter, my sister, my daughter.
Yeah, really don't like a trans woman being linked to that kind of incest sexual abuse shit. Doesn't feel great to be put in the same camp, but at the very least, now everybody here knows that Amanda Reed is Commander Voss, and she just transitioned after faking her own death and running away with millions of dollars. The immediate response here kinda fucking sucks, as Serious Man instantly misgenders her, and then Woman Detective expresses shock at the idea that the sex dude is out on a date with a guy.
Oh my god. Tony's on a date with a guy. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's the thing to focus on here. Not that she's a murderer or anything, but just to also misgender her and act as if she hasn't clearly gone through a bunch of hormones and surgery and effort to be a woman. Could we focus on the crime that she did and the threat that she represents from that level as a murderer, rather than acting as if her trans status is the real initial problem to address here? I mean, I know I'm too late here. This aired 2 decades ago, and the ideas it represents have already filtered into the public consciousness, but that doesn't stop me from still being mad about it, and still wanting to get people to know why this is a bad thing.
With a guy? Yeah.
We then see that Sex Dude is getting very close to Amanda Reed, which obviously is now, for the cis audience, presumably tainted by the fact that she is a he, as transphobic people would put it, because they don't view gender as anything but intrinsic and unchangeable, despite the everything about Amanda Reed. This includes them getting the kissing on, something which absolutely makes me feel like this is going to be some kind of joke or something after the fact on the Sex Dude. You don't have a physical connection with a trans woman in this time period in this kind of show without there being some horrifically bigoted writing reason for it. After that kiss though, Sex Dude finally answers his phone call from his boss man, and then we get another little bit of transphobia sprinkled on top here, when Sex Dude tells them that Amanda just went to the ladies' room, and the other people respond with a "great, now we can add that to the list of charges." Because much like modern Republicans, they believe that trans women shouldn't use female bathrooms, and so that's another crime that Amanda is committing, I guess.
Where's Amanda?
Ladies' room.
Swell.
We can add that misdemeanor to the murder charges.
Despite the fact that I would ask you, are you expecting this person to be forced into male bathrooms? You don't see the potential risks and danger and harm from that being a thing that they have to do. I mean, I already know that this is a time period when after all of this, Amanda Reed is going to be going to male prison, looking like this, which seems like a recipe for disaster, but unlike SVU, which had a terrible episode around that very premise, one that felt as if it was a punishment for being trans, At least in that SVU episode, the people who we are rooting for felt sad about the situation.
You know, if Cheryl had been born a woman, a jury would have no problem acquitting her.
Here, the law enforcement are fully happy to fuck Amanda Reed over because she's a murderer and therefore she gets what she fucking deserves as far as they're concerned. And they don't even see her as really a woman despite the everything of it all. No cis man is pretending to be a woman to the extent that they get surgery and go through all this effort to transition just so they can commit crimes. Come on, writers.
Yeah, but I gotta take this because I can't take a call from my boss.
Sex Dude thinks that a prank is being played on him at first when told the news about Amanda, before the serious music comes in as he realizes that Amanda will probably kill him if she thinks that he is an NCIS agent, based on the fact that she previously has already killed one. I mean, this whole thing is doused in misgendering and just generalized transphobia. That shit's been happening since the reveal, to be honest. And this then devolves into Sex Dude being a lot colder towards Amanda Reed. The coldness being not really because of the murder stuff at all, but mostly because now he sees her as a man and finds it disgusting and wrong that they kissed.
He is packing a .357 and a knife in his purse. He killed Chris.
I mean, he still thought that she was hot back when he just thought she was a cis woman who had killed one of his co-workers, but now it's a problem. After he pulls a gun on her and while running away, Amanda gets caught by the NCIS. The boss man holds a gun on her, and then she gets shot because it's unclear what she was doing with her own gun. Like, she didn't drop it immediately, so I guess plausible deniability about killing the trans woman you're angry at for killing one of your co-workers.
He didn't have a chance.
The NCIS questions why Amanda tried to shoot Boss Man and not surrender, a question that goes unanswered because the show has 1 minute left. And it really becomes clear that the transphobia of this episode is the transphobia of the uncaring writer. The episode then ends with the goth chick bringing up The Crying Game and talking about how cool of a movie that is.
Reminds me of The Crying Game. It was such a cool flick.
Can't leave me now.
Yeah, The Crying Game, where we see a trans woman get intuitively punched by a dude after making out with her. That's the appropriate reference to bring up at this point, I suppose. Though I guess we should really look at that as a case of the writers of this show being like, well, here's the one thing I know about trans people, and the fact that they go to Bangkok, so that's good enough to make them the villain of this episode and base everything I know off of that film. We then get the NCIS definitive statement on the idea of womanhood, as they talk about how Voss was just hiding as a woman for 3 years.
Gotta hand it to Commander Voss. For 3 years, he hid in plain sight as a woman.
Yeah, that's the right way to approach that, I'm sure. Just a regular thing to do. I'm sure criminals are always completely changing their gender and their identity they present as to get away with crimes. Let me just quickly check my long list of, nope, never mind, doesn't really happen, does it? But the woman agent says that Voss wasn't a woman just yet, because the surgery to get a vagina was only scheduled, not actually done. Even when cis people are slightly affirming in this show, they're still affirming in a fucking bad way. Like, that is such a common attitude amongst a lot of people, that the transition process is the act of becoming a gender, and only when you have finished the entire thing that they consider the entire transition, do you earn the right to get to be called the gender you identify as. And those are meant to be the progressive cis people. The traditional ones won't see you as that gender at all, ever. And then NCIS really puts the nail in the proverbial coffin by having this be the way that it goes out on the episode.
What was it like, tonguing a guy?
Forget it, I can't take it.
Yep, that's pretty much the level of trans epilogue I expected here. Now, let's review what actually happened this episode, just so we know what we're working with for the conclusion. The trans character never got to talk about themselves at all, and we never learned a single damn thing about their identity except from the NCIS group in the last 5 minutes dropping the twist and using it to misgender and deadname and demean her. The trans woman got shot, was an evil murderer who only transitioned in the eyes of the writers and the presumable audience so that she could get away with doing crime as a man, and so that effectively negates any sympathy one might feel for her or efforts to make her gender identity unrelated to her committing other crime.
Amanda is Voss.
She's a he?
Yes.
In fact, the main reason for her being trans in this show at all was specifically just for the shock of revealing that and to let them get one over on the sex dude who made out with her, allowing the others to mock him for having kissed a guy in their opinion, something which is both transphobic and homophobic.
No, way beyond hinky, it's
Speaking of way beyond hinky, Tony?
That's what we have to work with here. The final bit of preliminary investigation stuff to go off of is that the actor for the role of Amanda Reed is Jamie Luna, a cis woman who has been in a bunch of TV shows, and I recognise once again from her time in Supernatural as Annie Hawkins in Of Grave Importance, when she is the hunter that all the other hunters hooked up with and who dies and bonds with Bobby as a ghost in a ghost house the boys are investigating.
Well, let's get to cremating. We ain't got all day.
That's unrelated, but you know my normal spiel about how trans roles should be going to trans actors and that it encourages people to see us visually on the screen and it gives us chances to get into the industry and that having a cis woman is at least better than having a man play us because it tells people that trans women can look like regular women in their mind too, something which goes against the expected stereotypical norms at, well, not at just that time period. Plenty of people these days seem to believe that they can always tell a trans woman, and then we see cis women getting harassed for being too manly or cis celebrities getting transvestigated. I think in this case, I'm just rather happy that a trans person wasn't involved in getting dogged on like this. I mean, I could say that I would hope that a trans person being involved would lead to the writers making better decisions about how they present the trans woman, but I also don't really think I believe that to be true in this case. From what we can see in everything that I've laid out, the trans person and the trans representation was effectively non-existent. There's no real desire to explore any of the ideas about us, no real desire to present our struggles and identity through the actions of Amanda Reed.
Well, he wasn't a woman yet. Surgery was scheduled for next month in Bangkok.
your plumbing turned outside in.
It was mostly just a random gross factor chucked on at the end for a bit of fun for the writers, and so that they could lace hints throughout to build to that reveal. As I've mentioned before, this show's transphobia does not come to us from the school of SVU or even CSI, both of which at least tried to put some depth on the actions of the trans person involved, and to give some sort of insight into our world in their own poorly done and expressed ways. Instead, NCIS comes to us from the same place as Ace Ventura, just random, wanton transphobia with not a single iota of investment in the character at all beyond the fact that they're a criminal and that their very identity is put into question as being merely just some ploy to achieve another crime. Amanda didn't transition due to some lifelong desire to be a woman, and the only way she could achieve that within the medical system was by robbing the Navy and faking her own death. No, no, no! That would be almost explaining her story in a sensical and heartfelt but ultimately tragic way. Amanda is just a dude who stole a bunch of money and killed a bunch of people and found that the best way to get away with it was by having a bunch of fucking surgeries and hormones and faking being a woman for I guess the rest of his life.
Not answering.
Maybe he can't.
Oh, and I guess also hooking up with guys and stuff and doing expected woman shit in alignment with stereotypes, which is kind of odd considering the what they're going with. It's transphobic because it doesn't bother seeing it as anything more than a cheap punching bag in deviant horror. Little better than for being a quick villain in a story. But it's also kind of sexist too, and also kind of homophobic. And that's the episode, and my conclusion on it.
Stop it, come on. She's a he, bonehead.
If you liked what I said here, or enjoyed what I do, or just find it to be a comfortable level of background noise to have vaguely happening around you while you focus on whatever you're really focusing on, that's great. It's exactly what I can at most hope to be in this world. If you want to support the channel and keep it going in that capacity, the best way to do that is by going to my Patreon or Ko-Fi in the links below. Those in the $5 up category should be scrolling past the screen right now, and I appreciate everyone on there for helping to allow me to keep investigating trans representation and trans media in my own subjective capacity. It all helps to pay for the bills, like internet, food, rent, power, and of course the cat manager bill that I gotta pay this guy right here. Merlin does a lot of background work for the channel, like reviewing my comments, so just remember that whenever you say mean things, this is who you're saying it to. But yeah, on a serious note, it does mean an awful lot to have people who are invested in what I make to the degree that they're willing to financially keep me going, especially with the infrequent sponsorships that I experience and the very random / spotty YouTube ad revenue that queer content gets on this platform. Moving to another platform would be a great idea, but I don't really have that option. YouTube is pretty dominant for long form content, and to all the people who suggest Nebula, that shit's invite only and I haven't been invited. So you know, that's where that story just kind of ends. But yeah, huge thanks once again to all the people who support this channel, and also a big thanks to the people who support it in other ways, like engaging with the content, or sharing it with other people, or clicking on videos after watching this one. It all goes towards keeping the channel in the good graces of YouTube, and that's pretty damn important as well. You know how dominating that algorithm is if I don't appease it. Anyway, that's the video. Thank you for watching this, and I hope that you all have a great day.